Okay, then, first thing I'm gonna do is this is a green. I turn everything green. This is green bowl. And my tenons, this would have been a bigger tenon. And what I do is I wind up making, I'll end up, once this dries, I turn this down. And if you lift this up, can we see this here? Let's get rid of this thing. Yeah, that's a little somewhere. There you go. Yep. There you go. Okay. I end up turning a smaller tenon here. And I use a faceplate, and I'll show you how I do that later on. But I always I get rid of the biggest piece, and then just this small one, just so I can have something to work with. Because the only thing now, this bowl is done. The only thing I'm going to have to do now is sand it from time to time as I put the epoxy on and my finishes on. And so I was going to show you how to do this, except I got some big time cracks, and I thought for sure it was going to blow apart. And I did not want to do that with the camera because I would have shit my pants. But, you know, so I got some cracks going on here. And so what I end up doing is I just mount it against the chuck. This is a heavy piece of rubber. I mount it and then I move it around till it's somewhat even. And then I can turn this tenon, and then I turn the foot. And then I can clean it up. This thing, I'm not really sure how old this is, 2 years, 4 years. It was sitting around, I picked it up, I said, oh, maybe I can use this here. It's a really pretty piece of wood. And you'll see it when I put the epoxy on it, it's gonna be really pretty. But the last thing I do is take the tenon off. The bowl is completely done, and then I'll take the tenon off, and then the only thing I'll have to do is just mess with that area. And then I'll put a coat of epoxy over that, and then that'll be it. But the inside's done, the outside's done when I get rid of that tenon. And so, you know, I always go with the big one and then get rid of it until I get just that small one. You can see that. And I put the small one
You can get a whole song.
no, we're good. This one I didn't. This one still got the big tenon on it. And I probably, this is epoxy. I have two types of epoxy. One epoxy that'll actually dry underwater. So this was green when I turned it, and I put the epoxy on it right away. And that's probably why that tenon's still there. What I'll do now is that gets sanded, and then I'll put the that nice glossy finish, and I'll show you that in a minute. And when I do that, then I'll make this tenon small, and then everything is finished except for just that small tenon. And then that's how that works. And okay, yeah, I'm going towards my computer. Right
Yeah,
now.
no, it's the camera. Right?
Yeah, no, I got it now. The epoxy actually penetrates right through to the surface. And this, you can't see this too good, but I think yeah, you can see some of the epoxy here. See this here? So this epoxy actually penetrates right through the bowl. And then this was, you know, I got some checks here. There's actually cracks. And I actually thought this piece of wood was going to stay. I thought it would be stable. You know, but I set it, let it dry, and the next thing I know, I got some nasty cracks going on. And so it was already dry, so I was able to put on my finished type epoxy, which is this glaze. I've got some cracks in here. Yeah, you can see the cracks. I'll mix up a little bit of epoxy with coffee grind, and I'll fill those cracks in. And this is such a pretty bowl, I did not want to lose it. You know, it's just so nice, I think, anyway. So it was worth it. The little extra work, because the bowl's already done, so a little extra. You know, look at it. I got these pretty lines in here going on. And I'm just showing you the wood now. I'm not bragging about my work. It's the wood is really pretty. So if you got a pretty piece of wood, even if you're no good at doing this, it almost will make your work look good. But again, same thing, that little tenon. And now what we're going to do is we're going to move along over to there, and I will show you the epoxies that I use. Yep, focus in. Yep. We're good.
I got plenty of
Yep.
room
Can you focus in on these things?
on these pieces.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. These here, again, I turn these green. The wood is really unstable, so I put that epoxy on it, and you can see how it looks. It doesn't. It's ugly. I don't care. It's just ugly. But I end up sanding it down. I will sand this down, and then I'll put, a nice cover of epoxy on like this here. And then again, this one here, I'll fill these cracks in, and it will look good. And this is again another one. It's just a pretty piece of wood. It's a base, and I'll probably epoxy the inside of it. So it will be a base and not a boss, because this one I epoxy inside, outside, and then you can use it water. You do whatever you want with it. So that's just a nice. I like how the grain it's almost perfect. The hot and the sapwood. So it's a pretty piece. And the same thing here. This one you can really tell. You can see how all this color here. That's the epoxy that actually penetrates. And then you see the dry spots. That's from the epoxy going deep into the wood. And again, there's two types. One is a progressive, and that's what this is. This epoxy dries on the water. And then the one that's really glossy, this one hates water, and it'll turn cloudy if the bowl is wet. So if it's wet and I want to keep it stable, I put the progressive epoxy on it. And then if it's already dry, 8%, 10%, then I can put this epoxy on it, and then, it's one step less that I have to do. This piece is really punky. See how punky that is? This is another piece that was sitting on the floor.
No.
I cleaned up, and as I'm cleaning up, I find things. And this one's really punky. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'll mix up some epoxy, and I'll show you how this will soak it up like a sponge. And this is so punky. Then after it dries, then I can return it, and I'll have a nice flat surface. I can clean it up nice, and then I'll put another coat of epoxy on top of that. And then this is I got a little faceplate and a little block of wood, and I'll take that off after. So first thing I'm going to do is mount this on the lathe. Okay, and then you can see my setup here. Then we got the rotisserie motor right here. So I made a little platform, and that holds the rotisserie motor. I got a shaft, and that goes in. I take the belt off of the head, so it's just freewheeling. I'm not working against the motor. So it just spins nice and easy. And then that thing will just spin, and that's how fast it goes. So it's running at 4 RPMs. And so that's pretty much, and I usually have this covered up a lot more. But in order for you guys to see it, I took a lot of the covers off. So what I'll do is I'll show you how I mix this epoxy, and I'll explain a little more about the two types of epoxy that I have. You see that? Yep. Perfect. See, this is that progressive epoxy. It's a low V, 2-to-1 mix. And it comes out of New Hampshire. And this is the stuff that will actually dry underwater.
That's the brand of it,
You-
Progressive?
And
Roland.
this is mixed not by weight, but by volume. So I use little measuring spoons, 2-to-1. And that's pretty much makes it really simple. You don't have to wait. That bowl is so porous, I'm gonna mix up 4. I usually don't do that much. And I'll bet you it'll suck up all of those 4. I'll do up 4 for now. And then I like to scrape out the spoon so I get as much as I can out of that. So that way my 2-to-1 mix is pretty close. And all you got to do is wipe the spoon, and that's good to go. Put this over here. This back here. You want to be kind of neat, because otherwise you wind up with a big sticky mess, and I really don't. Okay, and then this is the catalyst. So that's the epoxy, and this is the stuff that makes it hard. And so I got 4 in here. I'm going to go 4 here. And if you notice, it's really thin. It's like water. And that's what helps it. A lot of times you go to the marine supply and they give you an epoxy, but it's real thick. So this stuff is like water, and it'll, and that's why it penetrates. And you don't have to be in a big hurry because it takes a while before it'll set. You got probably 5, 6, 7 minutes of open window before it stops working. Then you just want to stir it up for about 2 minutes.
So when I do that, I put a popsicle stick in my drill. Drill it. Is that too whipping? Like whipping it too much.
You're gonna get bubbles.
Oh.
And what I do is I count to 120, which gives me somewhere around 2 minutes. And if somebody starts talking,
So you work on. You work on.
then I lose my spine. I got to start all over again. And then it's, you know, so it's so much. And because I work by myself here, I don't have to deal with other people talking. But so that gives me 2 minutes. There's a little bit of bubbles. The bubbles don't matter because they'll come out as I start brushing it on. You don't have to wait. You mix it. You can put it right on the bowl. And so, and there's a lot of epoxy here, and I know that bowl's going to take it all up. I think you'll see better on that side. We're going to move it down a little bit. Yeah. So again, that's a really punky bowl. And this is basically all I got to do is you just put it on. You're just slapping it on. It's going to. And the wood will just suck it up. And you can actually see
Roland.
right there where it's already starting to, you know, that glossy look goes away as it gets absorbed into the wood.
Roland, I don't know if you can hear me, but you say
Okay, so I can hear you, but I didn't hear the question.
so. You said that's a progressive epoxy. Is that the brand name of it?
Yes,
Okay.
I got a bigger container. I'll show you on the bigger container. It's progressive epoxy that comes out of New Hampshire. And this is the stuff that dries underwater. It gives a really crappy finish, but if the wood is wet, it goes on. The stuff I will put on top, the wood has to be dry. So I have another bowl there's no epoxy on it, but the wood is dry. And I'll show you how that one, I'll be able to show you that epoxy. You know, it's the same thing. It's thin. It goes on the same way.
I work with some resins, but none of mine can be done on wet wood either.
Right.
That's why I was curious about this.
Well, yeah, this will dry underwater. In fact, I've mixed this up and just put it in a little vial of water, and it'll sit on the bottom, and then it dries. You know, so tomorrow you got a hunk of epoxy on the bottom of the water. And that's what's nice about this.
Roland, what did you sand the bowl to?
No, I didn't even sand this. I picked this up off the floor. I just wanted to show you what I could do with a really punky piece of wood that you would probably want. This is like a sponge. That's how punky it is. And it was on the floor, and I just wanted to be able to show you guys, you know, how this pot is done. You know, so and I used it all up. And that's a lot of epoxy for a small bowl like this here.
So basically, you're using it as a sanding sealer right now, right?
I'm using it as a stabilizer because it's different than a sanding seal. A sanding seal pretty much is just going on the surface. This here will actually penetrate and come on through the inside. This bowl is thick, so it won't come through. But this will penetrate, as compared to sanding sealer, this will penetrate into the wood and then it stabilizes, so it's not moving anymore. So I can, once this dries, I'll be able to take and remount this and turn it. And I'll be able to turn, you know, that punky part away, and I'll have a nice, solid, smooth finish at the end of it. You know, so that's basically, you know, how I use it. So if this boat was wet, I would probably use a little bit less, but because it's dry, I knew it was going to take it. And now it's, you can still see, you know, I got a little bit of, you can see those dry spots, you know, so you can see the wood. And I'm just going to put this over there, and in half an hour, you're going to see this where areas where it really sucked it up really nice. And again, tomorrow this will be hot, and if I want, I can start working it tomorrow.
Do you do both the outside and the inside, or just the outside?
He's asking me about the inside and the outside.
The only thing I'll do is on the inside outside is, you know, I grab one of those bases. Is a vase. So if I do the inside outside of a vase, then I can actually use it as a vase. You know, so this is epoxy inside, outside. This, I think that's probably only got one coat on here. I'll probably put another on. I know the tendon's on, so I know I haven't sprayed it yet. And I usually spray it with this, with a U-pole. And this is a UV protected. It's an acrylic. It's an automotive top coat. It goes on cars. And so I'll use that on the top and a little bit about on the inside. And that's just to protect it. But so I can actually use, this is the only time I'll use it on the inside, outside, or occasionally I have a piece of work that's strictly up. But what I like to do is leave the inside, and then I put the tung oil on the inside. So I'll have a nice gloss finish, and then I'll have a nice tung oil finish on the inside, and then it's food safe, and they can do what they want with it then.
I think it was actually Epoxy USA, Roland, for that wet stuff. Was it the
Progressive.
website? Yeah.
Progressive epoxy.
Yeah.
If you Google progressive epoxy, New Hampshire, this is the stuff that'll come up. And it's a low V. It's as thin as water, so it'll penetrate deep into your wood, and it gives you a nice, stable finish. But it still gives you a crappy top finish, and that's why I'll go with and this is what I'll end up using. This will get sanded, and then I put this on top, and that's where you get that base that you just saw, that nice gloss finish. This will give me that nice gloss finish. It dries clear, it's non-yellowing, and it'll stay clear.
What's
And
it called?
supposedly, Total Boat says that this is probably one of the clearest epoxies, because all epoxies aren't the same. And the nice thing about Total Boat comes out of Jamestown Distributors in Bristol. I like being able to deal with the chemist, the person who's making it, versus, you know, if you go to Hobby Lobby, go to one places, if you have a problem, you don't have anybody to help you work through it. If I have a problem with this stuff, I can just call him, I can go stop, I can bring the problem to him and say, what am I doing wrong? Tell me what to do. So it's, I don't want this, this is what I'm looking for. And so if you've got the chemist, he can help you work through that. And that's what I like. But this is the stuff that I'm going to mix up next. And first thing we'll do,
You don't need to leave that spinning because it's already sucked in,
Oh, it's, all yeah, it's,
because it's sucked in.
yeah. Well, plus this, I was planning on just being junk anyway. This is just a show.
Roland, I have a question when you're at a minute.
But you can see how it already dried, you know, and that's not drying, it's just the wood is just really sucking it up. So that just brought up a lot of stuff. And what would your question be?
Roland, that stuff you were trying, UFO, how's that spelled?
UPOL.
You what?
See it?
Oh, POL.
And it's
Where do you-
number one, clear number one. You gotta make sure you get, it's the clear number one. They make different types, but this is the type that you want.
Where do you buy it?
I go to the internet and I go to maybe to Amazon, and then Amazon will show me different people that might sell it, and I'll go to the one that's selling it for the cheapest, including shipping.
Now, what do you use that for? Just for a final
Yeah,
protection?
this is the final because this has UV protection in it. Epoxies, that you can't get an epoxy with a UV protection. It just doesn't work.
What can't you put that over though? Is there anything?
No, you put it over anything you want.
Well, that's my question.
Yeah, no, I don't think I think you put it anything you want. In fact, I think I put it on dry wood. On those Christmas ornaments, the finials, you know, I just.
Where's the last place you purchased that at?
I don't remember. On the internet.
Okay.
And I don't know who it was, you know,
All right.
it's
You
probably
answered
mostly
my question.
automotive, because it's an automotive top coat. So chances are you're gonna find it at an automotive distributor for paints and that sort of thing. And if it's a fairly good place, then you get a good price. You know, like you can go to Providence Lacquer. Providence Lacquer, which is in Cranston, sells this. So you can just go there and buy it off the shelf, but you might pay $20, $22 for it off the shelf there. If you go on the internet, then you might be able to get it for around $16, $18 and shipped to your door, so you're not driving out there either. So that's, yeah, it's your choice. And then I might buy 4 or 6 cans at a time. You get a lot of coverage out of it. It's not like this can only go on one bowl, but I probably might get 6, 8 bowls out of this. And for what I sell them for, then it pays for itself. Well, not really. Nothing pays for itself in bowl making. It's an illusion we sell.
Roland,
Yes.
stone coat countertops, their art coat resin is UV. It can be used inside, but it's developed for exterior use.
Right, and then the other thing is some of the epoxies, like the countertop type, it wants to lay flat, and so it's harder to make it go on a spin, according to the people that I talked to with the epoxies. Total
Right, you
Coat
would
sells
have
an epoxy like that will go on the countertops, but it's so thin. He says don't even bother trying to put it on your bowls; it won't work.
Yeah, you would have to keep it spinning slowly.
Yeah, but I'm still having trouble with that, you know, so. And then if you talk to the chemist, a lot of the epoxies, they say it's UV protection, but the UV protected, the atoms just don't connect, is what happens. And according to what they told me. You can see how this thing just, you can't even tell that there's epoxy on it. There's a little wet spot right there. But the rest of it just sucked it up. And I knew it would. I could have done twice as much and it would have taken that in. Now this one, I'll show you how I do this one here. This one here, you can see, there we go. You can see nice colors in that. There's some nice colors, some nice greens. But when I put the epoxy on this, this is just going to pop really nice. And then what I do is I have a little block of wood, and then I'll just screw it to my tenon, and then I screw the faceplate to the block of wood because my faceplate is too big for my tenon. So I can do this and then put the faceplate on that, and then it works. Because the only thing I want to epoxy is here, because eventually that goes away. So I just want to get the epoxy from here to here. And what I have is this little screw, and I use that as a starter, so it's basically similar to a drill. And all I'm trying to do is give myself two and that's all I have for this a screw length. You know, you don't need to go in a ½ inch or 3/4 of an inch. You know, the bowl is done. It's only spinning at 4 revolutions. All I want to do is make contact. And you want to use a piece of plywood. You don't want to use a piece of wood. I use the piece of wood, and then the screws will actually split the wood eventually. So a nice piece of plywood works much better. Just screws are small, so it doesn't matter. The thing is spinning real slow. You can also add a little bit of color to the epoxy if you want. And this is basically just an acrylic epoxy, acrylic color that I put in the epoxy, and then I get something like so. This doesn't mix in with the epoxy, it kind of floats, and that's why you see the dark spots, because wherever there's a hollow, the color will find its way down into that hole. And that's what this type of acrylic does. Now, this is an oil type epoxy. I keep saying epoxy, sorry about that. This is a color and it's oil base. This will mix in with your epoxy, and then when you put the epoxy on, it will just stay red throughout. And it won't be translucent like this here. It'll be a solid color. So I like this better than if I used just a solid red. The solid red, you can get that from the Marine Supply. And can I have my bottle of water that's over there? Now this ball here, I want my epoxy to come across the top edge. So I'm going to throw some tape and wrap the tape around. You see, Rick, see where that red drill is? Right beneath that red drill, the shelf below. See that green tape? That one there, yes. Here we go. Automotive, you get this tape, and this is a detail tape, which means I can put it and move it around. I can keep a nice round circle, whereas the regular tape, you can't do that. So this detail tape is really nice, even if you're trying to put color on something. You know, you can control where that color is going to go. And you just can't do it with regular masking tape or that blue tape. It just won't happen. So that will be the edge of my epoxy. And now this tape, now all I'm trying to do is just create a dam. So when I put the epoxy here, it's not going to fall anywhere. You have a little more control that way. And then even if I get a little epoxy that sneaks underneath, could I have that? This one here. This one work. You can see where this, I got a little epoxy that snuck underneath here, in here, and that doesn't matter because I'm going to put this back on, and I can sand a lot of that away, and then whatever's left over, when I put my waterlock tongue oil on top of it, it hides it. You won't see that anymore, so it becomes one color, which is pretty nice. So it doesn't matter that much if you have anything that sneaks underneath it. And then there's always a little dam. There's a little edge right here. So when I put my tongue oil on the inside, we're having that, the epoxy is high here, so it's not going to roll into my finish. It just creates a nice dam. Helps me a little bit in the finishing. Okay. Then you don't want to mix epoxies. And if I mix whatever I mix to do that bowl, if I come out a little bit short, I don't want to mix a little bit more and add it to it because now I got a chemical reaction that's going off. And it's never going to dry because you got the first batch that's kicking and the second batch isn't ready to kick, and then the stuff gets confused, and then you're going to have a mess. So if you don't have enough to finish it, don't worry about it because you're going to sand it down and put some more on later. Now, this is a little bit of acetone, and I use this in this epoxy to make it a little bit thinner so it'll penetrate a little bit deeper. And I don't use much, and you'll see about how much I use. Okay, my spoon's already been worked out nice.
Roland, what's that on the bottom of the bottle? Sandpaper or what? Yeah.
That is called duct tape. Because I brought this with Paul. We used Paul's car, and I did a demo doing this. And because this was all yucky, I didn't want Paul's car to get yucky. So I just put tape on it. That's all that's for.
Okay.
Now I have to count, so don't bother me for a couple of minutes.
All right.
I'm going to go with 3. I use a medium catalyst. You can get a fast catalyst. The fast catalyst I use on the shells. The medium I'll use on the bowls because I want, as it spins, it's giving it a little more time so it can level itself out. And I'm not in a hurry. That's why I go with the medium here. And then I put a little bit of acetone. And I mix it up. And now when I'm mixing it up, I want to make sure that I get my sides, because you don't want to get the catalyst or the resin stuck to the side. So you want to make sure it gets mixed nice. Now Rick uses his drill because he doesn't want to do this. And this is good exercise for me. That's why I look healthy. And I'm not counting, so we're screwed. So we're going to keep spinning it because it will eventually clear itself up and look like water. And then I'll keep turning a little bit. But now it's already cleared up. You can see how nice and clear it is, just like water now. There we go. But you want to make sure that two are nice and mixed up. And always sweep along the edges to make sure you get any. And then there are times, if I'm mixing up a little more, I'll use 2 cups, and I'll actually pour this into a cup, mix it some more, and then pour it back, so it's layering itself back and forth. But this is just 3. This will be fine. And the nice thing is, if it's not fine, I can just take it off and put fine on. Because if like wood, if you take too much wood off, you know, you got too much wood off. Simple as that. Like if you're doing a hollow form and you take enough wood out from the inside that you find yourself on the outside, that's no good. That's bad. You can't fix it. But this stuff here, I started to, because the reason why I use epoxy is I used to do a lot of boat work. And when I started to turn, that finish, that's the best finish I could come up with. And I would start with a 40 grit and blah, 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 try to get it up. And then I put epoxy on it, and epoxy makes me look pretty good because it's really forgiving. And this stuff here that I'm using, hides the cracks, hides scratches. So if there's any kind of scratches, like that's sanded at 120, I believe. The brushes, I buy my brushes 100 to a box. And if you want to buy it like that, you want to make sure you pay a little extra, because that way the bristles stay in. If you get the cheapest one you can find, half the bristles are going to come out. So you're going to be fishing out bristles all the time. So if you go like this here, that's going to get the loosest ones out, and now chances are I'll be fine. And if I do, I can just pick it out, and it's easy. And now you want to see this one. This is going to be a pretty one. This one's not. Like this one's going to be so pretty. I don't know why I let it sit on the floor for so long.
Is this epoxy as absorbent as?
Yes. Yeah, it's the same thing, just like water. And it's actually a little bit more of it because I'm putting the acetone in it. So it's a little thinner. But the wood isn't as porous. So it's not going to suck it up like that sponge. You know, it's still going to absorb. And all I'm trying to do is get the material on the wood. And then as it spins, it will level itself out. So I'm not trying to get myself a nice finish right now. I'm just trying to get it on the wood. And if you're going to get yourself a setup like this, wear long pants when you're putting this on. Otherwise, you're going to have epoxy all over your legs. And that's not nice. Now, this is set up on my lathe. You can also just build a simple little box with some plumbing supplies and use that. In fact, I have them here. I thought I was going to be able to pick them out of the box, but I can't find that box. I just wanted to show you what you can do. So it's basically just plumbing supplies with a simple box, same motor, you know, connected. And the flange, like this faceplate, I would use a plumber's flange. It usually has 3 or 4 holes in it, and it attaches to black pipe. And it makes it just that simple. And then, you know, you can have 2, 3, 4 of these. You know, you don't have to have that many lathes. And now you can see right here, as this comes around, you're going to see some where it's absorbing itself. See that dry spot? That was wet. So now I have a little bit of epoxy. The only thing I'm going to do now is take my time because I got the window and I'm just going to keep applying this. And by window, I mean, that's how long I have to play with this. Eventually, this will start setting up. And I will know it because it's going to start dragging. And as soon as it starts dragging, then I don't even mess with it anymore. Because if I continue to mess with it, I pull all these little bristles out and I make a mess. So it's easy just to stop. But this, as it's spinning now, it's just going to keep leveling itself out really nice.
You're really pouring that stuff on.
Yeah.
Richard, do you keep 6-step brush when you're done, or do you clean it?
No, they only cost me like 25, maybe 40 cents a piece. Because I get them by the 100. If you get 100 of them, you know, it's so much easier just to throw it away.
That's what I thought.
Where do you get them, Roland?
Internet.
Everything's on the internet.
I just ordered another 100 today. I don't know who it came from. You know, it might have been Amazon, and then Amazon had somebody. I know it was Amazon, and then someplace had the price. I could have got cheaper ones, but then I always go down and read the reviews, and when people start saying this sucks because all the bristles fall out, you know, I would have saved 25 cents, but then I would be picking out bristles all the time. So I'd rather spend a little bit more, and look, no bristles fell out at all, so I did pretty good with this one here. But when they do, I can just take my brush and work it out, and then I can pick it off, and then rebrush it. So it doesn't hurt it. You just don't want them in there. And if you wind up leaving the bristles in, and you know, I sell my work, and you know, I had a customer look at it, and she found a bristle, and I said, well, that's my hair. And so that's a special bowl because you got my hair in it too. So there's some DNA in that bowl. So, and that's pretty much it. So.
Have you ever
Now,
tried
this will
foam
spin
brush?
like this, and tomorrow this will look like the nice bowls that I have finished. And then I'll sand it down again. I'll put another coat on that'll, like this was a mix of 3. I'll probably just mix 1, maybe 2, probably 1. And then because it won't take that much, because then I'm just going to put a surface coat on. It won't be penetrating into the wood anymore. and that's pretty much how it's done.
So after that second coat, you're gonna spray it or sand it, spray it, or that sprays way after the fact?
Oh, no, after the second coat, so, because I'm not working, there's not gonna be in fact, this place, I can't believe how clean this place is. The spider webs are gone, everything's gone, the dust. Usually I might have some dust that might accumulate, and I just sand the dust down, maybe with 400 grit, 300 grit, something, just enough to break that surface. And then I'll put another coat of this on, and then I might hit that with around a 600 grit, and that's when I'll spray the U-pole on top of that. And then I get that nice glazed finish that I'm trying to achieve. And I don't know if you can see that, but see that deep crack? There's a deep crack over there. Wait, we're gonna wait, and it's gonna come back around again. I'm really surprised this thing didn't blow apart when I was working it. But because I believe I have sharp bowl gouges, when I was cleaning that up, I was able to, now you can see how nice and how deep that is. That thing will go straight through. You can see that on the other side. What I'll do with that, now that this has the first coat on, I'll mix that coffee grind and a little bit of this and pack that crack. And because I got the epoxy's everywhere now, that ground, the coffee grind color is not going to bleed out into my wood. You know, so I can just get it right there. It'll be on that surface, sand it down a little bit. And then when I put the new coat on, you'll see like this nice black lines here, you know, so it'll match. And that, I think, is a pretty bowl. It's warped all over the place, but it will sit flat on the table because it's done moving. And then you can actually see, you can see that crack, you know, so it goes right through. This side here, I epoxied that and I put some coffee grinding in that with the epoxy, not epoxy, super glue, CA glue. So I put a little CA glue and then coffee grind and cleaned it up a little bit because I wanted it. So before I started to turn and clean up that backside, I stabilized this with the CA glue. And now when it's finally done, I get all this, that'll sand down a little bit more. I'll clean that up a little bit more. And then I'll put the water lock finish on this and it'll be food safe when it's done. And that's how I do this. You can see how pretty that is. And I think that's beech. I'm guessing that's a piece of beech that's been sitting on the floor for 2 to 4 years. What do you think? Think it's beech? Looks like beech, doesn't it? Looks good.
So do we want to unmute everybody or let them unmute themselves?
No, you can open up. Anybody has questions?
Love the grain.
Isn't it pretty?
Figure, yeah. Really nice.
Yeah, that was under a pilot. Wait a minute, look at this.
I got a question about the rotisserie motor. Is that from like what you would buy for a grill?
Yes, that's just a rotisserie motor for a grill. Where did I get that? Internet. I went on the internet and I looked for, this is a fairly powerful one. So this one here can actually spin a pretty big sized pig. So I was trying to get something big enough to turn a big pig. So some of my bowls are really big, and that will handle it. And then I'll let this spin all night. I'll just leave it and it'll be spinning in the morning and I'll shut it off in a couple hours because this will tack off in maybe 2-3 hours. And if I think of it before I go to bed, I'll come back out and shut the motor off because once it starts kicking, then I don't have to worry. It's not going to move anymore. I don't want to shut it off before because it'll sag. Now, if I turn this with just the lathe motor at the slowest speed, I get a rooster tail all the way around here. And I know that because I've done that. I thought I could go slow enough, but it's way too fast. And this stuff will just whip itself right off and just get that rooster tail across here. 4 RPMs, 5, going that slow, it's just enough to keep that so it levels itself off and you wind up with a pretty nice finish. Any other questions?
Yes. What did you basically make the shaft on the rotisserie out of wood, and then
Yeah, so you made
I made a block that goes into the headstock.
Yeah.
A block of wood. Now that piece of metal, that's just a 1/4 inch, 3/8, maybe 3/8 square metal rod I got from probably Home Depot. And then I had to make it fit into the rotisserie. And then I got a wooden plug and it fits into that wooden plug. And it's not a big deal because it's going so slow and there's no torque, there's no pressure, there's nothing. It's just freewheeling.
thank you.
Okay.
So I don't know if I can do this, but I'm going to try to.
Can you see that grain? Isn't that pretty?
It's gorgeous.
So I don't know if this will come out enough on the camera, but this is on my just on my workbench. So the motor is just behind here, and I turned my own flywheel for it, or pulley, and then just a Barron setup, and then same thing. I use a small faceplate to hold that. So no lathe, obviously, just handmade. Keep it spinning like that without tying up the. I don't have 4 lathes.
Can I have that box? The wood. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you gotta point at me now.
Okay.
There we go. That setup I was talking about, no,
I know. I just want to make
Okay.
sure.
there we go. It would be basically like this, like so. So what I would have is the motor mounted here. I would get a piece of PVC, run it through here, and then my black pipe would come through that PVC. So it's just a simple bearing, and then I don't even need that. I could just make that hole a little bigger than the black pipe and put a little bit of grease around that because it's only spinning at 4. What I want to do is make sure that I can capture that so it's not sliding in and out, and that's the only thing that I would, and that's 2 shaft collars, one inside, one outside, and then the motor would be here. I'd have that same thing with that rod that goes through, and then I'd have it set up, and I make sure I want to step it off, and so that black pipe would come out probably like so. And you know those the little feet they use to hang the black pipe on the ceilings and that sort of thing. That's what I would use as a faceplate. It would screw on, and you just have to remember that you want it to go forward because if you got it going in reverse, it will unscrew itself. And how do I know that? Because that will unscrew itself. So if you notice, I keep making sure because that goes either way. And so when I start it, I just like it to go in that direction. So it's a really simple setup. And then you can make 2, 3 of them and have 3 different pieces of work spinning at the same time.
All right. Thank you, Roland. So if anybody, unless anybody has any other questions, we'll go ahead and close this meeting out. Mike and I will be traveling to Situate next month. A gentleman out there I spoke with recently, and not going to give you any details, but he's a very seasoned turner as well. Should be a good meeting. And then I will send out that email for, just want to get a feeling for you guys, you know, how comfortable you're feeling going outdoors back to the school, if and when that happens. So if that's it, we'll wrap this meeting up, and Mike and I will make our trip back to Providence.
Okay, before we wrap it up, I want to show you this piece here. This is a live edge. And this is dry. So I'll put that epoxy on this, and because you can't see where I'm pointing. The bowl I just did, I'll put on this here. And what I'll do is I'll tape the inside of this box. And then when I put the epoxy on, it'll cover the top, and then it'll cover this. And that way, when this, because the block eventually is going to want to fall off, but when I epoxy this, then it's staying put. It's not going to come off at all. And then when I do epoxy it, then this nice dark color will pop out. So it becomes a really pretty bowl then. And that is the end of that story.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roland.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Hi, Dan and Joanne.
Hi, Mike.
Good buddy.
You ended up.